Hello everyone. Good evening and welcome to another episode of Why You So Extra, where we host changemakers and explore what it takes to put the extra into extraordinary. Today on this show, we speak with changemakers that inspire us, big and or small, who are doing that little extra to make a difference. My name is Andrew, and I'll be your host today. Joining me as our co-host will be none other than Johnson. The co-founder of Extraordinary People Impacting Communities, also as known as Epic. Johnson, how are you doing?
Good as always, Andrew. Super excited. This is our first guest who makes a difference with animals, and really, who doesn't like animals? Um, I think I'm really interested to learn more about her work. And I think also what's really fascinating is that she's a person like many of us who's juggling a full-time jobs, full-time commitments, and she's managed to carve out time to create impact on the side as well. So I believe that all of us will be able to learn so much and glean many insights to help enable common folk follow in her footsteps as well. And I hope everyone out there is looking forward to this.
Nice. It is our fourth episode today. We're on a little bit of a roll, but I think what I'm more excited is about is actually the guest that we have today, and perhaps for some context, right? When we started the talk show, essentially, was the purpose of this was to really highlight change makers, particularly on the smaller scale and also on a personal level. So the guest we have today, her name is Gowri. It's not a secret anymore. And it was funny because literally minutes ago was only when I remember how I met her. But either way, that shouldn't change much because I think for further
Yeah, she's here.
context,
She's here.
she's here. She's here. For further context, I think why I thought she would be perfect for being the guest today is I think we've met several years ago. I think in 2018, while working overseas, and we've been Facebook friends ever since. And I suppose social media does social media things. You just kind of keep in touch, but not really, if you know what I mean. You're just Facebook friends. But really, it was only at the tail end of 2019 I started noticing her social media postings, particularly more along the lines of helping animals. And it's been quite a reoccurring thing that I'm noticing on her social media page. So I thought, why not hit her up and ask her, hey, are you still doing this? Like, why are you doing this for? And everything. And I thought she might be perfect for today's show. So without further ado, let's put our hands together to welcome the big-hearted, the friendly neighborhood heroine, and the one and only Gowri Sritharan. Hello, Gowri. Can you hear us? Let me just unmute you for a quick second.
He may still be muted.
All
Can you hear
right.
me now?
Yes. Yes, we
Great.
can. Yes, we can.
Thank you for that introduction.
Welcome.
Never
You're very
heard it
welcome.
said that way before.
Ever heard what the friendly neighborhood
Yeah.
heroine part?
People know me as the crazy animal person who's walking around the neighborhood feeding animals. But yeah, that's
Well, we'll get into that. We'll get into that soon.
Yeah. I think
Maybe we might come out with different conclusions.
yeah, perhaps crazy is not so much the word. I like to use the word passionate instead, because I think what you're doing, it really shows if you don't have the passion necessary, it's near impossible for you to do what you do. So I think just for further context, I suppose for the viewers, this is what I know for now as of today. Gowri's been identifying, rescuing, nursing, fundraising, rehoming, resheltering, I suppose, and also keeping tabs with the new owners or the adopters of pets. since, as far as I know, only 2019. So quite recent, but long enough for sure. And that's essentially all I knew because, like I mentioned earlier, she was just a Facebook friend. But I'd like Gowri herself to introduce, where she from, what does she do, and also if what I said was true. So yeah, Gowri, tell us more about yourself.
Yeah, so what you said was true, but so I'm actually from Penang. Grew up in Penang. I was in Penang. I've only moved to KL about 10, 11 years ago, and I moved for work actually. So I work as a photographer, and I do a bit of designing, videography. I'm a freelancer, and that takes up a lot of time. But my first rescue, I've always loved animals. Growing up, we've always had animals at home. I grew up a lot with my grandmother, who's also very fond of animals, and she did her fair share of rescuing and looking after dogs and things like that. So I've always had that fondness for animals, always loved being around them. But it was about 13 years ago when I rescued my first pair of cats. So one of my mom's friend, she found these two tiny little kittens. No mother, just them two kittens on their own, and she brought them to our house and asked if we can like keep them for a while until she finds them a home. So me and my mom were like, yeah, sure. So we got little bottles, we were feeding them kitten milk, we were doing all of that. And one of those two was actually quite sickly, so she needed like vet visits, a lot of attention and care, and we were looking into all of that. And before you know it, we got so attached to them, we decided to keep them. And they're still with me now, 13 years later.
Wow.
So they kind of like started it. And ever since that, maybe because of that experience and, just it's so fulfilling. It's such a beautiful thing to experience that it just never stopped after that. So I've got like with me right now, I've got 8 rescued animals, and we've kind of rehomed and put a lot of them up for adoption as well. I don't remember how many, but yeah, 8 have stayed on with me.
Wow. I think to a certain extent, I share your sentiment, Gowri, and I'm not sure about Johnson, but for me myself, I think having pets and animals has always been a thing generally for me. Even though I like to just the keyword here is assume that most Asian families would say like, oh, why you want to take care of pets? We can barely take care of ourselves. But as kids, when you look at a puppy, whether it's a puppy or a kitten, you're always gravitated to like, oh, it's so cute. Like you just want to bring it home, that kind of thing. And through the past, I suppose, 10 years of my life, I've had pets in and out. Some I call my own. Some I did help foster for a bit. And I have nothing to say but agree with what you feel towards this subject. I know Johnson has pets on his own, but they're not quite dogs.
And speaking of that, actually, all this while I thought like, maybe because I don't have dogs or cats because I'm allergic to cats and my wife is allergic to dogs. And so for some reason we decided to get birds. And because that's so rare, for some reason we also became the friendly neighborhood bird people. And so actually we have fostered two lost birds, one of which we rehomed, the other in which we've adopted now for the last 4 years.
Wow.
4 years now. So I'm thinking, hey, actually, I do connect with this quite well because, for some reason that bird isn't, I don't look at it as a rehome or sheltered bird because now it's a bird that we love. We call him Buddy, so although we don't have cats and dogs, I do connect with
It's
with
very
your
easy
passion.
to get attached to them. Like it's
Oh,
it's
yeah.
impossible to foster an animal and say that you don't feel anything for it. Even just fostering, if you keep it for a while, when you eventually have to give it up, it's still, you still get very emotional. You don't want to part from it. So it's so easy to get attached to animals.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Agree, wholeheartedly agree. Uh, but Gary, here's the thing, like we all know. I mean, animals has existed alongside, I suppose, humankind for the longest of time. Some gravitate towards it, some don't. Some treat them as assets to their businesses and whatnot. But I suppose for our case, right, with having pets, it's a choice. Firstly, I think it's a choice. And I'd like to actually find out, through your years of experience, doing what you do for our furry friends, what were actually some of, I suppose, maybe you can share briefly what have been your impact so far. Perhaps like how many cats and dogs you've free sheltered, rescued, and also, what's your motivation behind this truly?
Yeah. Why do you think it's important to,
Yeah.
you know, to do what you do?
To be honest, right, I feel like animals out of anyone, maybe animals and very young children, I feel the most for them because I feel like they are the ones who are not able to stand up for themselves. Like people, even if, they were, yeah, I mean, it's nice to help an underprivileged person, a poor person, but to some extent, they have a voice. Animals don't have that. They don't have a voice, and because they're not able to fight for themselves, we I'm not going to say we, I would say humans have kind of just push them aside. They've encroached into their habitat, they've built homes where they used to live, they've pushed them out of like their natural surroundings, that they end up on the streets, they end up as strays. Every dog on the street was once, or maybe it's few generations ago was a wild dog living in the wild, but we've kind of developed all of that land, and so we've pushed them out, and now they have basically nothing, no roof, no food, no, they've got nothing, and they don't have a voice to say, to fight and say, you're taking my home, or you're doing this to me, you're taking all my food. So I kind of feel for them because of that, and because of that I feel like I need to be that voice, and I need to fight for them, and I need to, like, help them out, because there's just no way that they can help themselves. So that, I think, for me is the driving force, just
Oh, wow.
wanting to do that for them when they're not able to do it for themselves, because I think people to some extent can help themselves, but animals, they just really can't. Even something as simple as crossing the road could get them killed, you know.
Mm,
Hmm.
very true. Like I think it. Firstly, I think I also agree. In fact, many of the people I've met who do what they do for animals, and the simplest form is simply help people who help animals, tend to say that animals do indeed not have a voice that we understand completely. I mean, we can learn their behaviors and whatnot, but I think in terms of speaking for them, how they're treated unfairly or um, unequally as well, is actually quite important. I presume for people who actually can do and make an action, for these animals. Mm.
Hmm.
And I like to
Yeah.
think as well, it's not easy, like for sure. Sorry, Johnson, yeah, I cut you off.
Yeah. No, so I think while we're on that, and I think, it's very easy to kind of agree with that statement, and I think that there is truth to what you just shared, and it's easy to agree with that. Say if we already like animals, or animals are favorable to us, but I do know that there are also people out there who perhaps not been exposed to animals, or some dislike animals, and perhaps, like, what would you say, like, helping animals and doing what you do, how does that, um if you believe so, impact society as a whole? Would you be able to make any correlations for our friends out there who may not be too accustomed to this topic?
um it's a bit difficult for me to see from their point of view, because for me, I've always loved animals. I've got a mother who's also my motivation.
Mm,
She does a lot for animals, and so that kind of like, with her, I know I can talk about animals and things like that. So it's a bit difficult for me to see it from the point of view of somebody who doesn't like animals, because I'm always like, what is it that you don't like? Like, I don't see it. I don't see why you don't like this dog or this cat, But I guess what I would want to say to them, which I have said before, is if for some reason, like, everybody's entitled to their own personal beliefs and their opinions, and if you don't like an animal, that's fine. Just don't go to the extent of harming them. Just let them be. You don't have to go out of your way to feed them or save them or rescue them, but don't hurt them. Don't chase them away, or don't deliberately try to kill them, poison them. So um that's all you can say to people like that. Also, if you are willing to give it a chance, like, say, you've probably never been exposed to animals, and so that's the reason why you're not fond of them, just because you never had that exposure. Then why don't you give yourself a chance to, like, maybe go to an animal shelter, or work with somebody who has animals, even a neighbor who's probably got a dog. Try to get to know them, and maybe you would see a different side to them. Because, like I said, it's impossible to hate animals.
I
Okay.
really like the point Gowri mentioned about giving ourselves a chance. Um, I don't know why, just thinking out loud, I think that resonates with me very much at this point in time. And just curious, how do you keep track and account of how many dogs and cats you've rehomed so far? Or is that just completely out of the window by now?
Like I told you before we started, I haven't even thought about all of this before. Like, you just go out and you just do and get it done.
Wow.
You don't really think about it until you really have to sit down and, like, think. But I think it's only recently that we started posting on social media. So if I look back on Facebook, I might be able to, like, count how many there are there. But there are a lot that we didn't post about before we actually knew the power of social media. So yeah.
Would you have I'm curious, would you have a rough number? Like more than 20,
Oh,
more than 50,
yeah, I would
less than
say
100, more than 80?
I would say less than 100. Yeah, less than 100, but
More than 50.
there's, like, different degrees to, like, these rescues. So there are some that needed, like, the very serious ones that needed a lot of medical attention, that had been in the vet for a very long time. There are some who didn't make it after we had rescued them and tried to save them. They didn't make it. There are some that we maybe find today, and tomorrow someone's already taken them, adopted them and taken them. So I can't, I don't know why, but in some cases it just happens really easily. In some cases it takes a very long time to find a home, and then, some cases we have no choice but to send them to a shelter. Yeah, so it's I really have no count of, like, how many cases there have been.
And that's fine. I mean, as long as you know that the animals are getting the attention that they need. And just to clarify as well, I don't think we made this clear, but the animals that you typically would serve would be dogs and cats, am I right? Or
Yeah,
other sorts
because
of
they're the
animals.
most common, I suppose. I mean, we do feed the crows near our house, but we've gotten a lot of backlash from the neighbors for that.
That, that's
But
that's that's pretty controversial, I think.
yeah. But, I mean, like, I see all animals as animals. They can be
Okay.
rats, they can be crows, they can be birds or cats, dogs, whatever. But
Right.
mostly the ones that we see that need help are cats and dogs. Because
Okay.
the population is just so high.
Yeah.
Yeah, earlier, Gowri, you pulled up the numbers. I was just like, I mean, shocked, but not really as well, because it is a known issue, right, in modern day society, that there are stray animals here and about. You may see it more in this season, you may see it less in this season. And
Yeah.
I'm going out of a limb here. I think during the pandemic, I'm not sure if you know of the Red Flag campaign, which I think is essentially about families who couldn't really afford to sustain and keep their pets, abandoning their pets, especially during the lockdowns and such. Um, but I think where I'm trying to get here is, perhaps I want to hear throughout your journey, like what are actually some of the toughest moments or most inspiring or some of the best moments throughout your entire experience? What would you have to say for that?
Um, just to say a little bit about what you mentioned during the pandemic of
Mm.
people abandoning their pets, we firsthand experienced a few of such cases because it so happens that the area that I live in is it's towards the end of like a developed area. So it's very convenient. It's like almost a dead end, and it's very convenient for people to come and leave their animals there. And I think these people know that there are
Oh.
feeders in the area who look after the animals. So throughout the pandemic, we were finding new dogs every other day that had been dumped. But the problem was we also already have about 30 dogs here that have been here for a while because it used to, with the MRT construction site and all that, these dogs came from the construction site. And so we've been feeding them and looking after them. And like dogs, they kind of live in a pack, and there's always like an alpha male, and they have their group of like dogs that they get along with. So when someone comes and leaves a dog here that they're not familiar with, we've actually had to deal with cases where the dogs get attacked because they fight, and or the dog runs off into the highway and things like that. So uh, you know, people abandoning pets is definitely a huge problem because you're kind of just like dumping the responsibility onto a feeder. Just because there's a feeder there, it doesn't mean you can just go and leave your animal there. That's one reason. The second thing is also the safety of the dog. It is definitely going to be attacked if there's another dog in that area, because the dogs are very territorial and they don't really accept like another dog into their pack easily. So it got really bad. It got really bad during the pandemic. It's just unfortunate that this area happened to be. I think they probably already know that they can leave it here, and then they just keep coming back and leaving dogs here. So thankfully, we've got a group, which is something I also want to talk about later on. Within this neighborhood, we've kind of formed a group of feeders, and there's like maybe 4 or 5 of us in that group who take turns to feed and look after the animals. And one of them is actually a volunteer at a shelter. So what she does is, all these dogs that get abandoned, that it's not safe for them to be here, she takes them to the shelter and keeps them there. Again, there's only so much we can help, and we can't keep moving animals there every time one appears here. So if we could, we want to find the person who's dumping and like have him charged, but it's not that easy. They just appear overnight, and for the sake of the dog and the safety of the dog, we have to do something. So it's very frustrating, but there's just can't do anything about it.
Yeah, I've experienced a couple of incidents, I suppose, uh, close to what you've explained. I think there are people out there who I want to give them the benefit of the doubt and just say that they lack education, firstly, on what it really takes to become a pet owner or an adopter. Bringing in a new family member um, that is essentially not human and doesn't speak the same language as perhaps we do. That there are people out there who would take advantage of other people's kindness and goodwill. I think a few years back I met an auntie. Her name is Auntie Sharon. She's probably late in her 70s, battling cancer if I'm not wrong. But she would have a shelter. Um, it's not a proper officially recognized shelter, but essentially just a home that she's sharing with other dogs. And similar to what you explained about people abandoning it in certain areas, like construction sites and whatnot, she actually picked up all these other dogs from the construction site around her neighborhood, which I will not disclose because dumping is a real issue.
Yeah.
I think a lot of what's the best word to describe, like pet helpers or um,
I would say, yeah, helpers, or maybe if what
rescuers?
they do is feed and look after the animals within the neighborhood, then they usually referred to as feeders, because
Mm,
you don't attempt to rehome them because the neighborhood is safe enough for them, but you feed and look after them, get them neutered, make sure they're healthy, vaccinations are done, you know. So usually they would refer to them as feeders.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I will stick with that. Like feeders and rescuers, I think um, a lot of them are afraid to disclose the addresses and the information, right? It's always like a dilemma of, if I make this place so grand and recognizable, people feel less guilt abandoning their pets here. But if I don't maintain and upkeep the facilities for the pets that are already here, the pets also don't have a good time, or are in a poorer environment to be retrained, to be taken care of. So there's so many um, angles of issues that we're faced with, right? Um, for you, when faced with all these obstacles and challenges, what do you do to kind of overcome it, or to drive yourself forward and to persevere? Is what I'm very, very interested to
Um,
know.
oh, perhaps before that, Andrew, I think that you did pose a very important question earlier, actually, which I think maybe we kind of forgot about that. But if you could just share freely and perhaps share some of your experience as well, Gary, in terms of what has been some of your perhaps your most inspirational moments, as well as some of your toughest moments in doing what you do.
The toughest, I would say, is definitely just I tend to get very emotionally involved with all of these cases, because I am quite a sensitive person when it comes to animals and their well-being, and so dealing with that whole emotional part of it is actually very tough. It's People don't think of it so much, but when you have to, when it affects your sleep, and you just don't want to eat, you don't want to sleep, you've got an animal at the vet that's going in for surgery, you're not sure if they're going to make it, it takes a toll on you eventually. Even something like, I'm driving and I see a dog that's been hit on the road, and it's gone, it's passed away, and it's on the side of the road. That does stress me out. It gets to me. I can't just, like, I wish I was like the next person who's just driving past, no dog, okay, dead, like, I wish I could handle it in that sense, but it tends to affect me a lot. And that for me is actually really tough, just dealing with the whole, like, I don't know how many times I've cried over animals. Every time we lose them or they're going through something tough. One of my own cats that I rescued, the first one that I rescued 13 years ago, 2 weeks ago, we found a growth, and we had to take her to the vet, and she's going to have to go for a surgery, and then we'll know whether it's cancerous, and she's going to have to start treatment. So, emotionally, that whole week, I was so affected by that. And, just the thought that we may lose her because of this. So yeah, that's definitely tough. Like, you have to be a strong person to do this. Unfortunately,
Right.
I'm not. I'm just getting by one day
But
at a
then,
time.
but there must be a reason why you keep doing what you do again and again, right? And
Yeah,
I
because
suppose that's got to do with some of the good moments that you have as well in this.
definitely, yeah. I guess it's a balance. There are bad days, but then there are also good days where the animal that you rescue actually makes it. And coming to that, one of the most inspiring rescues, from probably for me, is also one that I've kept because we've gotten so attached to her. She's a dog. So I was working, and I finished work at 2 o'clock in the morning. I had a shoot. So I was driving home after work along a highway. It was still pretty busy at that time. And I thought, like, from the corner of my eye, I thought I saw a dog by the side of the road. And but it was because it was a highway, I already drove past, but it was kind of nagging at me, because, like I said, I get very emotionally, like, involved with stuff like this. So I was like, no, I have to go and check it out. So I actually went and made a turn and all, came back on that highway, and I pulled up, and it was a puppy. It was a puppy that had been hit, and it was still alive by the side of the road. So I pulled up my car, I got down, and the puppy was in a really bad condition. Both her back legs was like severely injured. There was blood all over the road. I could see the bones on her leg, and I really didn't think she was going to make it. But she was still alive, and I didn't want to leave her there. So I actually sat down on the side of the road, and I was waiting for her to die, because I was like, you don't have to die alone. I can sit here and wait for you. We waited, like I was waiting with her, but it didn't seem like she was ready to give up. And then I was like, what am I doing? I should like at least give her a chance. So I picked her up, put her in the car, and rushed to the 24-hour vet. Took her there, and they managed to like just wrap her all up and close. Like, she had lost all the skin on her legs, and she had multiple fractures, but of course at that point we didn't know because we hadn't done an x-ray yet. But they kind of stabilized her for that day, gave her painkillers, antibiotics, and whatever, and admitted her. So I came back home. Of course, I didn't sleep that whole night. The next day I get a call from the vet saying they're going to have to amputate her legs. Like, her legs, she's not going to make it. And even at that point, I was still not ready to like give up on her. So I was like, no, I want a second opinion. So we discharged her from that vet and took her to another vet that we know, that we'd been to before and we were quite confident with. He had a look at her and said, I'm going to try everything I can to save her. And so we started treatment. She stayed at the vet for about 2 months. She had to go through 4 surgeries, put in a plate, remove, because she was still a very small puppy. So, like, there was a lot of issues where I couldn't find the right size of plate, go in for surgery, and then the pin wouldn't hold onto her bones. And there were a lot of issues. But after all of that, about 6 months after I had found her, she walked. So she actually like got up on her own, and on all fours, she walked. And I like threw a ball, and she got up and she went and got the ball on her own. And
Wow.
that for me was like, it was worth everything. It was worth like, the whole, and it was,
What is she called? What is she
her
called?
name is Sashti Velan. It's a
Oh,
very,
wow.
it's a long name. Yeah. It's also it's a very religious name, because at that point we were just like, we wanted everything that we could to help her. We were praying every day, and so it's really a miracle that she made it. And now she's perfectly all right. She's fine. She runs, she jumps, she does everything that a normal dog does. It's been she's 2 years old now, so it's been about a year and a half since the incident. Yeah.
Correct me if
Oh,
I'm
that's
wrong, Gowri. I have an Instagram page
Yeah.
currently showing on screen. Is Doggo. That's the dog you're referring to, right? The brown doggy. I see. I
Yes.
see.
So if you go to that page and you scroll all the way to the end, you would see like the first day that we had admitted her, and we started posting from then, because with her, I feel like the universe just kind of came together to help her. So we reached out for funds, because at that point me and my housemate, my friend who was also involved with the rescue, both of us didn't really have the money to save her, and her vet bills came out to about 7,000. So we actually used social media, Facebook and Instagram, to reach out to people, and we managed to raise that entire amount on social media. Through contributions that we got from, a lot of them are people that we don't even know personally, but they contributed when they heard her story. And so the reason we created the Instagram page was because we wanted everybody to be updated on what was going on with her. And instead of updating each of them separately, and like I said, a lot of them we don't really know personally, so we created this page, and we would share all our photos and vet receipts, bills, everything on it, so that people know what her progress is and how much money we spent and things like that. So we were just completely transparent with everything. That was the reason for that Instagram page.
Wow. Thanks for sharing, Gary. There's so many things I want to talk about at this moment. Let me see. Earlier you mentioned about fundraising and what it's worth, and also when you mentioned that Sashi Velan had to stay in the vet for 2 months. Immediately, I mean, I can't deny, right? I'm immediately thinking of the financial aspects of things as well. And since you've touched on fundraising on social media, you've brought forward a point where I actually wanted to talk about, which is indeed the money. You can't do this without money, that is for sure. No vet out there is going to say, oh, I'll do it for you for free. I'll come and come out of work and do it personally for you. I think that's going to be quite a rare feat. So how's the experience like actually fundraising through public means such as Facebook, where perhaps there are strangers who you don't know of? And do you get questions of like, hey, how do I know if my money is actually going towards the puppy or the cat that's on display here? Do you show receipts? Do you show progress updates? And is that a difficult process to get people to believe, or do people just say like, oh, here, take my money, it's a cat, it's cute, or take my money, you know? How's that like?
I wish it was that simple though. Like, but it is a bit tedious because when you have a rescue on your hands, there's actually a lot of work to do, especially if they're not at the vet but staying with you. Just looking after them, cleaning them is a lot of work. So finding time to actually update social media and keep people informed is tedious, but I think it is so important. It is so important to let people know, especially those who have contributed, how their money is being spent, because they have given you that money for good use. And I think you owe it to them to let them know how their money is spent, what's happening with the animal that we've used the money for. So the simplest, I would say, if you have there are a lot of rescuers actually. I'm not sure if I'll call them rescuers, but there are a lot of people who reach out on social media and say, there's this dog or cat that I found, but I can't take it to the vet because I don't have money. Can someone come and help? But that shouldn't be the first step. I think what I'd like to say to these people is take them to the vet first. It's the animal's safety at this point that we need to prioritize. So take it to the vet, get it stabilized. Sometimes it could be a serious injury, but the first step is, of course, having a vet look at the animal. And then put up a post on social media, write everything that you can about the case, where you found the animal, how is it doing, what were the vet's comments. People want to know everything. Tell them the whole story. And it was actually something that we learned from Sashi Velan, that there are a lot of people out there who want to do something for animals. They just don't know how. So they don't have the means to actually go out and rescue on their own, but they are willing to contribute, more than willing to contribute, and to give something for an animal if they know that it's going to help them. So you just have to reach out to them, and social media is the best way to do that. Reach out to them, and then you'll be able to get the funding to actually help the animal. So yeah, vet bills can be crazy. That's just the way it is, I suppose. I haven't actually been to a vet where it's been cheap. Yeah, so use social media, get the funding and help the animal, and be completely transparent with everything. Vet bills, any amount that you spend, even if it's out of the vet, like if it's to buy food or to buy additional medicine, everything needs to be there for people to see.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I think, yeah, I suppose that's the responsibility that comes with soliciting public funds.
Yeah.
But that's wonderful to know the kind of impact that's been made, and it's always inspiring, to know how, for those of us who puts ourselves out there, believing that some people will help, and to know that many strangers do respond to these things as well. I think it definitely is a great motivator, And I just wanted to circle back to a question that Andrew asked earlier, and you've helped slightly less than 100 animals. Since we don't have a number, but definitely a lot. And you've been through some really tough times, and of course some good times as well. But especially in those tough times, what do you do, Gowri? What do you do when you face these sort of obstacles?
I think it's very easy to bounce back, because when you face an obstacle and then you eventually are back with the animals that you are rescuing, you see that they are happy and they've been fed and they're full, it just, from somewhere you get that energy to want to do more, you know. So I think just surrounding myself with animals, the ones I've got at home as well as the ones outside, just being around them and spending time with them is enough to kind of remind me every day that this is what I want to do. Like I've told people who are close to me that I feel like this is my purpose in life, you know. Like if people go through life trying to find their purpose, and like, you know, for me this is it. I think my purpose is just to make the lives of animals more meaningful. And so when I'm around them, that's all the motivation I need, you know. Just sometimes when we go to feed, we still go out every night to feed the dogs in the neighborhood. And once they've eaten and you just like sit down there with them, they all come around you and they just want to cuddle and they roll and they're upside down and they want belly rubs and all that. And I think that's all the motivation I need, you know. It just gives you that energy to want to get up and do more. So yeah.
I think that's really inspiring, Gowri.
That
Who would have
explains a lot.
who would have thought, right? Just surround yourself with animals.
Yeah.
Um,
But I
uh,
suppose it's important to note, right, Andrew, that it's like she said. I think one, your conviction is so inspiring, you know. But yeah, surrounding yourself with animals, like if that suits your passion, right?
Yeah, if that's your passion, then you'd find a way to get it done. Yeah.
well, here's the thing, you know. Earlier you mentioned about fundraising through public means, gaining the trust, saying that it might not be that easy as, oh, it's cute, here, take my money. So this is something I like to bring up, and I'm not sure if we are all fully aware, but I think earlier this year there was a falsicle amongst the whole fundraising for animals in need saga, you know, for lack of a better word. And it was essentially people who were stealing identities, photoshopping identities of not only humans but the doggies and the cats, the kittens as well, and essentially scamming people to donating. Well, I'm not going to name names. I'm sure we've all heard to a certain extent, right? How has how has that whole saga affected, or perhaps affected as well, what you do? Do people lose trust and credibility, and do people now have a very poor perception of, you know, oh, Gowri might be doing this, but how do we know if she's legit, especially for people who don't know you personally yet, right? Has that affected you in any ways, or just
I
rather,
would
what are your thoughts about it?
I wouldn't say it has like affected me personally, because the only time that we reach out for funds is when we have a case on our hands that is going to cost a lot. If it's
Mm.
something that we can manage on our own, we try to handle it, because, you know, everybody's going through a tough time, especially with the pandemic. So we don't really like, if it's going to be 2 or 300 ringgit, then we just cover it. But we do fundraise when there is a case that needs more money. So I haven't experienced the effects of it personally, but I'm also a part of animal groups on Facebook, a lot of animal groups. I don't even know why I joined those groups, because every day you go on Facebook and it's so heartbreaking, because there's like so many animals in need of help and you can't really help them all. But anyway, on this Facebook, I've noticed that ever since that incident happened, that people are very afraid to give, because they don't know if their money is going to be used wrongfully. So, you know, it definitely has, because of how public the whole incident had become and how famous it got, it definitely has made it difficult for shelters and rescuers. And I have a friend who's also a rescuer, who has, she rescues a lot of paralyzed cats. So she's got in her home, she's got a lot of paralyzed cats that she looks after, and she depends on public funding. And she has experienced um, people actually questioning her about how the money is being spent. People outwardly saying, you know, this is a scam, we need to investigate her. But we personally know her and we know she's doing good work. but you just fall under this whole blanket assumption that all rescuers are out for money, and that they're going to cheat people to get the money on the pretext of helping the animal. So yeah. So to I mean, like, I wouldn't say that all animal rescuers are genuine. Of course, there's going to be those who are able to use this for the wrong reasons, because they see how easy it is maybe to raise money this way. um as for me personally, I just try and, like, even when this whole incident was happening, I didn't want to, like, jump to conclusion, make assumptions, take a side. For me, it's just what I do and what I can offer to the animals that are under my care. Beyond that, I can't really tell anyone, who you should give your money to, or how much you should give, and things like that. So yeah, I just try not to be involved with the situation, but I do know it has changed people's perception a lot.
Yeah, again, we're coming back to people taking advantage of others' kindness and goodwill, right? Um, Unfortunately, when such things happen, there's not a lot that we can do. But I'm really glad that people took the initiative to go and find out and essentially pocho their identity, reveal their true.
They did a
Um,
lot of research.
yeah, it's
Talk to
quite
them.
impressive.
Yeah.
It's quite impressive. It's like, wow, we're all investigators now. Suddenly, it was really it's heartbreaking, firstly, but it's also um, quite comforting that we didn't let this scam continue. And um, undoubtedly, it's going to be very tough for current existing pet feeders and rescuers, that this is now a talking point. And I really hope that over time, people will see who are genuine and who aren't as genuine, right? Um, Perhaps, like when we talked about that, I actually remembered a story, and if I'm allowed to share, not too long ago, I think a month ago, especially when the movement control order and the MCOs started relaxing, um, my family and I would jog around our neighborhood, and here's something we noticed. We jogged to an area that we normally wouldn't, and we saw a house with a cardboard sign saying call. Then there's a name, call name, and we saw like maybe 10 stray dogs just hanging out by the gate in the evening, just watching the cars pass by and stuff. And my mom actually saw the owner and asked, like, what's this about? Are you selling dogs? Are you yeah, she was just curious, and she found out that this owner was apparently going to move out of his rental where he was renting in, but he had like 10 dogs. And he said he started with one or two, and then it just reproduced
Wow.
over maybe a year or two. And because now he has to move out, he's in an urgent space where he has to relocate these dogs in less than 3 days, because that was his time. His time was up. The tenant wanted him out. Um, so he could have easily just say bye and like gone out, but also personally I felt that just putting up a sign and allowing the dogs to reproduce to this state, not really taking care of their medical conditions as well, is not as responsible as one might think. Because if you truly care, I think you would think for not just a short-term plan of like, okay, I'll keep you here, I'll keep you fed day to day, but not think about the fact that I am renting here. There will be a day I have to move, and now it has became essentially became a neighborhood problem, because if he releases all these dogs just out in the wild because the tenants doesn't want to keep them, then suddenly we're left with 10 extra strays in our neighborhood. And that was quite a alarming possibility for myself and my family. So my sister actually took the initiative to help share pictures and images and find potential adopters. But it just reminded me that, not everyone really, really, truly, like, not everyone can just be pet owners and adopters and
Yeah.
fosters. So for you, Gowri, like, what would you have to say to other rescuers or other quote unquote, I think I'm a rescuer? What would you say, yeah, to fellow rescuers out there, fellow feeders out there?
Um, I think rescuers, especially people like me who don't really like, this is not a full-time thing, who do it just purely out of passion, out of love for the animals, I think you definitely have to reach out and get help. You can't do it all by yourself. It's tough. It's really tough to take on that kind of responsibility. And there are also a lot of people out there who want to be a part of something like this. So reach out and get all the help that you need. What I also earlier mentioned that I want to come back to now is we've all these years, like for many years, we've always heard people say we need to rescue a stray and then have it rehomed, put it up for adoption, get someone to adopt. But personally, I feel we've come to a point where we've got so many stray animals that it's going to be impossible to find homes for all of them. So what we have started doing in our neighborhood, and what I've been encouraging other people to do as well, is I'm very sure that within every neighborhood there would be a group of people who would love animals. Like there definitely is. You just have to like seek them out and find them. And if you can find this group of people like we have in my neighborhood, form a group with them and try to take care of the animals, look into their welfare while keeping them in your area. So what we've done is we have raised money amongst us, and we have
Ah.
neutered all of the females and some of the males, and we neuter them and release them back to where we have them. And every night we go and feed them, and if anyone has an injury, then we take them to the vet. If they've got bad skin, we get the medicine that they need to eat. But these dogs are happy because they're well, like medically they're taken care of. They've got food, they've got water, and they're in the neighborhood, so we can keep an eye on them. But we haven't actually like tried to rehome them or find them homes. Of course, there's the issue, of like, there's in every case there are going to be haters. So we've got like people here who don't really like us feeding the animals, who want to get rid of them, who have
Mm.
called the council several times to come and trap the dogs and take them away. So those are all things that you have to deal with as well. But if it is possible, as far as is possible, try to look after the animals within your neighborhood and just keep them there and keep them healthy. A dog's lifespan is probably like 10-15 years. Maybe out on the streets is less. So if you have them neutered, you wouldn't have stray problems in 10 years to come, But if you let them reproduce and keep having puppies, it's never ending, and it's impossible to find them all homes. So that's what I would like to tell rescuers is reach out, get people together, form a group, and do what you can within your neighborhood, within your means. That could be everything for that dog. It's not necessary to like find the best home and put him in a house with someone if that's not an option. Ideally that's the
Right.
best thing, but sometimes we just can't get there.
Yep.
So
I wish you were there to tell that guy in near my neighborhood
I wouldn't have said it so
exactly what.
nicely.
Yeah, I mean credit to its own. He thought it was helping, and perhaps
Yeah.
it's just a simple thing that he lacked certain education, and
I
and
think there's also this, a lot of people are not aware that it's neutering or spaying an animal is a very simple procedure, a very simple surgery. It can be done in one day. The animal goes in the morning, comes back in the evening, is completely fine. Very seldom there are like side effects or anything from the surgery. So people are very afraid to do it because they think it's a huge deal, but it actually isn't. It's a very, very simple procedure that everybody needs to get done for the animals within their community,
mm,
not just for the ones in your house, but as far as possible, try to trap, neuter, and release the ones outside your house as well.
oh,
I'm curious. Like earlier, you mentioned, there are haters as well, and people who are opposed to, having animals around. And I suppose in your case, you're saying you have 8 animals in your house, and how would you manage the expectations or manage these sort of things around, and you know, your neighbors and whatnot. Is there any challenges that you face from them? And if so, then how do you overcome them, and what do you say or do?
So with the 8 animals that I have, I've got 5 cats and 3 dogs. So all of my cats stay indoor. They're in the house with me, so they're usually quiet. I think people don't even know that we've got cats in the house. I've got 2 dogs out in the porch, and the other one is in the house. So if anyone was to like drive past, or they see the two outside the house, and they might think, oh, these are the only 2 animals in the house, but we actually have cats and dogs inside. They're quiet because they're happy, they've got food, they've got no reason to be noisy. So it's in that sense, we've managed, like every home that I've been in, that's how we've managed. It's okay. But with dealing with haters, I think I've experienced that when I go out to feed animals. Sometimes you see a dog or a cat, and I always have food in my car. So I've got 2 Tupperwares of like cat food and dog food, and it's always in my car, so that if I see an animal outside, I'm able to just feed it. And when I do stop to feed like that, you have strangers come up to you and go like, why are you messing up the place? If you put the food here, the dog's going to keep coming back here every day. Or if the dog doesn't eat it, the rat's going to come. And, you get a lot of that from strangers. I think the best way to deal with it is just to ignore them. I sometimes just pretend they're not even there, because for me, I'm very careful about engaging with them, because if you say something and upset them even more, once you're done feeding the animal and you've gone home, they might take it out on the animal. They might poison them, or they might call the council on them, or they might, people can do horrible things. So I don't take the chance. I just don't engage. I just put the food and I'm out of there, because I'm worried about the safety of the animal, So that's the only way to deal with these people. Just ignore them.
Yeah. Is there like a best practice of, where to strategically put this food as well, to ensure that we also minimize wasting food and attracting pests and whatnot?
If you're going to feed a stray, I would say try to feed them away from houses and shop lots and things like that. So try to feed them away from where people are walking or doing their stuff. So usually for us, it's like a very quiet car park, or I would say like construction sites, where most of the animals that we feed now are at construction sites, but they're not really like everyday people don't go there. So we try to feed them in safe areas where we know that they will be safe as well. So just try not to get them into where people have shops or houses, because that's when they get the most upset.
And I'm curious, how do you distinguish between, like, because we are familiar with a lot of strays, but between the strays that needs help from you to feed them, and those that don't? Because I know of some really fat stray dogs around.
Actually, if you take the time to notice, you would be able to tell when they're hungry, because they have a way of like sniffing about for food, or digging through the garbage, or just following people, maybe hanging out outside a hawker center, things like that. So with these animals, I always stop to feed them. Dogs that are full, that don't really need a meal, or that have been fed, they tend to ignore you. Like even if you call them, they walk away, or they tend to actually like gallop and walk away faster. They're not really sniffing about for anything. Those dogs usually have already had a meal, but even then I would still stop and offer them something, and if they want to eat, they eat. Otherwise,
Okay. So would you say, I mean, just kind of like picking up on that, would you say that making sure that these dogs are well fed and whatnot would also ideally help the people around the area as well, especially those that are uncomfortable with dogs? Because if they don't feed it, then the dogs are more likely to come up to them, right?
Yeah. So we actually have a dog here in our area that we have named 3 o'clock. I know it's a weird name for a dog, but we've named her 3 o'clock because when we first got to know her, she used to come around at 3 o'clock in the morning in front of all our houses and dig through all of the rubbish bins. So if you don't latch the door for the bin, she opens it and she starts digging through the rubbish because she's looking for food. Yeah, and it happens every day at 3 o'clock. So what I used to do is, because I sleep really late, I work late. So I would go out and put food for her at the end of the road at about that time. And then she started eating there. And then slowly I shifted that and finally took her away from the housing area closer to the MRT site. And now we feed her there. And ever since we started feeding her, she hasn't come around at 3 o'clock anymore. because she's got food and she knows food is coming and there's no reason for her to dig the bins. So I guess in that sense, just keeping them fed is preventing them from coming into the housing area where people will definitely complain if they come out in the morning and see rubbish all over the place. So once they're fed, actually dogs, once they've eaten, they find a spot somewhere and they go sleep. Once they're full, that's it for them. They don't really they're not in your business at all. It's when they're hungry that they come around and ask for food.
That's really interesting. Yeah, no, that's new information for me. Thanks so much.
Well, Gowri, I have a question, and I think it's perhaps you've thought about it as well. As you're doing this from a day-to-day basis, what is actually the long-term goal, and do you foresee yourself doing this truly like as what you mentioned earlier during the show, your new life purpose? But what is the long-term goal, and what are your hopes and dreams, and how can common everyday people do to support that? Because I think it's very useful that we have all this information, but how does it relate to people who maybe don't have reasons to care as of now? What would you have to say for that?
So I definitely see myself doing this for the rest of my life. People who know me would know that I'm single, I'm not married, because I've always been afraid to commit to somebody who's going to keep me from doing this.
Ooh.
And that is definitely a thing, because I do have friends who are like me, love animals, but have settled down with somebody who wants them to be at home, raise the kids, not out, and then there's a lot of conflict.
No puppy love for you, yeah.
Yeah. I'm not ready to deal with that kind of drama. So this is the most important thing in my life. I always tell people who are close to me that the reason I want to get up in the morning and go to work and earn money so that I can use that money for this, so it's probably the one and only purpose in my life. So for me, the long-term goal would be to eventually be able to have and run my own shelter. Right now, I feel like that's the one thing that's missing for me, because there's so many animals that I wish I can keep and look after myself, especially the ones that need the care, like the paralyzed ones, or we had a dog that had damaged kidneys and needed drips every day, which I could have done, but I just didn't have space to keep the dog to be able to do that. So it's the lack of space for me right now that is an issue. I wish I had a piece of land, a simple structure for the dogs and a lot of trees, and they can just be there and have someone there to look after them. That sometimes when you're out and you see a dog that really needs help and you're like, oh, I wish I can just pick him up and take him somewhere, but there's no such place to take him to. So that's
Right.
That's one thing that is very challenging for me right now. So the long-term goal, if all goes well and if I'm blessed with it, is to have my own shelter. And
Great. Great. To all our viewers, if you like the work that Gowri puts into, and you like to support her and maybe give her a piece of land and help her build her own shelter, you've heard it here first, exclusive on this show. So Gowri, when your shelter is successfully out one day, we were here.
Definitely, you guys will be invited over. You guys will be the first ones there.
That sounds very exciting. Well,
yeah, and if any of you men out there, nowadays you can't be too sure, right? Yeah, we're looking for someone who loves animals and loves a woman that loves animals.
This is a dating show now.
I didn't see that coming.
Neither did I.
We've got to pick up on that, right? Yeah.
Well, we're about an hour into the show, but I still have quite a few more questions. Maybe controversial. One of which is really to know your opinion on buying pets. And do you think buying pets is ethical? And also, how should one justify bracket, if there is a need to justify, how does one justify the act of purchasing pets such as dog and cats? What are your thoughts on that, Gowri?
It's a very, very sensitive topic that I have got a lot of backlash for because of my opinions. But personally, I do not support buying pets. I am completely against it because I feel like for every pet that you buy, which comes from a breeder, someone somewhere is breeding the pet for you to be able to buy it. One stray animal has lost a chance of having a home because
Mm,
if that home was vacant and in need of a dog, instead of a breeder producing the dog for that home, it could have been a dog from the street, and there would have been one less dog from the street. One more dog rescued than to have been produced through breeding. So for that reasons, I'm completely against buying pets. Um, there are a lot of other reasons where breeders sometimes are unethical. There's a lot of backyard breeding where the mother dog is not cared for. Those are real issues. That's cruelty involved there. But there are breeders who claim that they are ethically doing it. Even
mm,
so, for me, the main issue is just one stray dog losing a chance at having a home because that space has been taken up by a dog that's been bought and put there. So I'm not in favor of buying pets. I
right,
don't like pet shops for that reason.
right.
Yeah, and I'm the kind of person who's very vocal about it. So any post that I see on Facebook that's trying to sell pets, my comment is always adopt, don't shop.
Mm,
So yeah, not afraid to say it, but yeah, I
yep,
I I know people who still buy animals and who find every reason they can to justify it.
yep.
Usually don't understand their reasons. I don't get it, because for me, having been around animals so much, like whether it's dogs or cats, I don't see a distinct difference between the breeds. Like some people say, no, I need a guard dog, and so I have to get a Rottweiler or a German Shepherd, or I need someone who's good with the kids, so I have to get a Golden Retriever. I've seen stray dogs, rescue dogs that do all of that, so you can't say that a mongrel or a rescued animal is not going to look after your house or be good with your kids. So yeah.
Yeah, the reason why I asked that, Gary, is because I think I was one of the victims in the past. This takes me back easily. I think 10 years ago. I purchased a dog from a breeder. He was a beagle, and we named it. Well, I named it AJ. Literally stands for Andrew Jr. AJ the Beagle. And
Cute.
I think at that age, right, without knowledge or awareness that I have now, I was one of those who say like, "Oh, I want to adopt a pet, but I want to have a very specific pet." It's like, "Hey, but I want this breed, that breed for different purposes," like what you just mentioned. You summarized it perfectly. Um, but people out there will still justify, like at the end of the day, it's still a dog or a cat, and it's still alive, and they may not see that they're denying a potential stray animal being adopted. Um, but there's also not much we can do other than ensure that these pets perhaps were bred ethically or sold the
Yeah.
right way, the quote unquote right way. And it's tough. It's tough. Like it's really tough. Especially when you're an impressionable kid like myself. Oh, I just want a dog because it's
I
what
think
I
it's
like.
tougher these days when everybody wants something that's Instagrammable. So you want the fluffiest dog, or you want to put a pink bow on a poodle and have a photo. And it's people are all about the way that the dog appears physically than what value the dog has. Because if you see an animal for its value, you'd be able to appreciate any dog. It doesn't have to be fluffy or cute or small or whatever.
Hmm.
So yeah, it's now it's becoming like a trend to have like a small little cute dog that you carry with you wherever you go. But a dog is a dog at the end of the day.
It's more to support their social perception, right? How
Yeah,
it makes them look or how it brands them
correct.
as a
Yeah,
person.
yeah.
Yeah.
So sometimes I meet people a lot of people who I meet for the first time, I'll be like, yeah, I love dogs. That's like a question that I ask them. So are you an animal lover? And they'll be like, oh yeah, I am. I love dogs. I have two golden retrievers at home. I love golden retrievers. In my mind, I'm thinking that's not an animal lover. Like you shouldn't love an animal because you love a certain breed. If you're an animal lover, it should be any animal under the sun. You feel for them, you love them.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I can't say that I have a strong stance on this particular topic, but and I mean, it's very clear that your passion and your love for animals really shines through, and I would say like your love is so developed for animals that you don't discriminate at all, between what type of animal it is and whatnot. I suppose, realistically, there are many people who, their love may not be as developed and it extends to a particular species or stuff like that. But perhaps wouldn't you say that would also be an opportunity to kind of like at least with it's almost like one of their foot is already through the door, right? So they like that particular kind of dogs. I
Yeah.
think, wouldn't you say that these are the kind of people that could also be educated and made aware, to perhaps accept all dogs and to become like a person like you?
That reminds me of a lot of my best friends. I've got this really good friend of mine. She went to Russia to study, and while she was there, she was, of course, lonely because she'd been away from the family, and she had the chance to buy a puppy while she was there. So she did a small breed puppy. She bought a puppy, and when she came back, she brought the puppy with her. And my initial reaction was, of course, why did you buy a dog? Like, do you know how bad it is to buy animals? Like, I wasn't even like, oh, this dog is cute. I'd like to play with your dog. None of that. For me, I was just very upset that she had bought the animal from a breeder, and you know, just my whole sentiment with buying pets. So I think I got to her to the point that I made her understand why it was wrong, and why, of course, the animals with her still, but she kind of got it. And after that, that was like the first and the last pet that she had bought. Right now, she's got 9 dogs at home, and they're all rescues.
Oh
Yeah, so
wow.
she started liking dogs because of that first one. Unfortunately, it was one that she bought, but that kind of like triggered her love for dogs. And then she also understood why it was important to save them, because you start feeling for them from like a different sense. They're not just there because they're cute. They're like your kids. You want to look after them and nurture them. And so yeah, she's adopted. She and her husband both love animals, and they've got 9 at home now. So yeah. I guess like
That's
what you
wonderful.
said, that could be like, that's probably the first step. That's one leg through the door already. Yeah.
Yeah. Because I mean, the way I look at it is almost like the dogs, even those that are bred, once they're born into the world, it's pretty much the same, right?
Yeah. It's
Whether you're
by
born
no
in a
there's
street
no
or you're
fault
born in
on
a
them.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. They've been put here by no fault of their own. They didn't have a
yeah,
choice. So I am not at all upset at the dogs, just the people behind what's happening with the
of course.
dogs. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm also curious, like, because I'm also thinking, like, in order to get like the technology, the whole industry around pets, I almost feel like, I mean, I don't like to use this word, but in this case, perhaps like, being playing the devil's advocate, like the whole industry, in order for it to survive, in terms of ensuring that there's adequate amount of vets, that vets have a job, that you have the best type of food being produced and stuff. Wouldn't isn't this like a result of this industry of buying and selling pets as well? You know, how do we make sense of that? I'm
it's
wondering.
it's become very commercialized, the whole thing. Even something as simple as pet food that we used to cook at home, just rice and meat and what vegetables, and feed our animals. Now it's all, like it's enriched foods with nutrients and minerals, and it's going to cost you this much. And if you've got an animal with a kidney problem, then it's this specific food, or that all of that. Yeah, like you said, it's all it's all turned into this whole huge business. And owning pets is not as simple as, you know, I see a dog, I like it, I'm going to take it home and look after it like it's my child. You know, there's a lot more to it. It's a lot of money that's involved. And yeah.
Yeah. No, I think that's I really appreciate your honesty and your stance as well. And I find your opinion
Sometimes
very
it's I'm not sure if it's a good thing or a bad thing, but I think all of this creates an impression that owning animals are expensive, and for that reason a lot of people don't want to adopt pets. Sometimes when there is a chance for them to adopt an animal, the first thing that goes through their mind is, I'm going to have money for vets, I need to buy this food, it's going to cost me this much, and for that reason they're like, no, I don't want to commit to that. I mean, I respect that, if you, because definitely it is a commitment, but I think they shouldn't get the wrong impression that it's going to be difficult or it's going to be too expensive, because
yeah.
you know, that's what the industry is making it out to be right now, but it doesn't have to be that way, you know.
Right. Well, uh, I think for with the interest of time, I actually do have well, I'm not sure about you, Johnson. If you have any other questions, please feel free to chip in. But one final question from me, I think, really is, now that we've understood so much about, or understood more about adopting and also being a pet owner, perhaps there are viewers out there who may be listening to this and they're thinking to themselves, hey, I could do with a pet, or hey, I could take care of a pet or two. Um, what would you have to say for aspiring pet owners, and perhaps being a pet owner yourself, how has life changed, and what should they expect? Yeah.
I think if you're about to become a first time pet owner, um, don't don't worry about you know, the expenses. Am I going to be able to manage this? Think of it as like you're nurturing a child, because that's essentially what animals are. They remain kids forever, they're like babies forever, and the whole experience is so fulfilling. It is so, there's so much to enjoy, there's so much of excitement, you know, just watching them doing little things, learning little tricks, or sometimes something as simple as watching them sleep. It's so peaceful. And you know, when you come to the end of the day and you watch them sleep, and you know that this is mine, I've looked after it, and now it's happy and it's comfortable, it's really fulfilling. So don't let anything else get you to the point where you start considering whether or not you want to adopt a pet. Having said that, also be prepared for a long-term commitment. It is not going to be 1 or 2 years. They're not, animals are not toys. You can't buy them because they're cute and small and you want to play with them, and then when they grow you don't want them anymore. I had one experience, a very bad experience. I gave up a puppy for adoption. It was a very cute chubby puppy that we rescued, puppy, and the person who adopted it kept him for 6 months because the daughter wanted a puppy to play with. 6 months later, she calls me and she's like, "The puppy is grown now. We don't really want him. Can you take him back?" So I didn't want to leave the puppy there because I know that they were just going to probably release it somewhere. So I went, took it back, tried very hard to find it a home, but it was a full-grown dog, and it's difficult to find homes for adult dogs. So we had to send him to a shelter and support him while he's at the shelter. But you know, that's what I don't want people to do. Don't get a pet because it's cute. You must want an animal because you want it to be a part of your life and part of your family, not because you want a showpiece at home or a toy for your kids to play with, you know. So, but other than that, the experience is absolutely beautiful. It's very exciting. It's so amazing coming home every day to a house that's filled with love. That is probably like the biggest change for me. Walking into an empty house and walking into a house with 8 animals in it is a complete different world. That's Sashti Velan
Hello.
actually.
Oh, wow.
There you go. A cameo
To
on
make an
cue.
appearance.
Oh
Right
my.
there.
That's Sashti
Wow.
Velan. Yeah.
I'm just staring now. Like,
Just as planned, eh, Gowri? Just
Sorry.
as on cue.
On cue, yeah. She loves the
wow.
attention. This one.
Hello
Oh my
there.
gosh. Okay.
Yeah. So I think that's the fantastic I think picture of what one should or should not do, and what should people consider as well if they're considering adopting and or getting involved with a pet. Andrew, would you say we are prepared to close this and summarize this?
Yes, yes. But I think before that, I'd just like to maybe share some of my key takeaways throughout this show. Obviously, it's been extremely refreshing. Just to talk to such extensive detail. When it comes to animals, pets, rescuing, feeding. And here are some of my key takeaways, and I'd like to just share with everyone that may be listening here. I think, firstly, while it's been reiterated many times now, but it's you can't deny the fact that I think providing a voice for those who can't speak, and in this case dogs and cats, is extremely crucial. And I think I was really glad to be able to just find out and learn the whys and the how it came about of your story, Gowri. And I think it's really inspiring, very noble, and to some extent sacrificial as well, because you do put in a lot of time, effort, blood and tears, as cliche as it is, but I'm sure it's part of the process, and it's really tough work, man. Like and I think the whole mental exhaustion and emotional attachment side of things are often overlooked. You would think that it's as simple as take it back, nurture it to good health, send it off, job done. But like what you mentioned, it's you're emotional, and we're emotional beings as humans, right? And I also really like the point that you mentioned that to overcome hardships and adversities was to surround yourself with things you love, and in your case it happens to be dogs and animals again, but also look out for a support system, like you mentioned, the Facebook groups and whatnot, because I believe that they play an important role to it as well. So I think my final few words is really, I really commend all rescuers and feeders out there, and I think maybe later on you can share, but I sincerely hope that the public out there can help support these causes, if not make it worse, just help support people like yourself out there. What about you, Johnson?
Yeah, so my key takeaways, I think I found this really insightful, because I can't say that I'm very knowledgeable about this, but Gary, I think you truly have enlightened me to what you do, and to know more about what people can actually do to also get involved to make life better for our friends, our cats, dogs, and animals on the street as well. What's really clear is how, like, this whole show of Why You're So Extra is really to discover people like yourself. You're an ordinary person, but you're really special. I think your passion really shines through, and and very rarely do we meet people who says very clearly, this is my purpose. And I think that honesty really comes through, and I believe that all who are watching and who will be watching this will be able to see that as well. And I think it's something that all of us can aspire for, in whatever our passions would be. Some more practical things that I've learned is that, one is for people who are looking to do good or make a difference out there. I think just like myself, I've experienced this, and just like we've heard from Gowri as well, there are many people out there who wants to make a difference, but they don't know how. And they are looking for such opportunities. So we've heard that story as well. And for those of you who are interested in doing the same thing as Gowri, or who are already doing something maybe on a smaller scale, the next step you can look at is banding together with people around your neighborhood, because there will be definitely animal lovers around your place, and you can band together and share your resources and actually do a lot more good that as well. Another is ensuring that dogs and cats are well fed, ensures that they don't actually get or that reduces the amount of time they are in your way. So dogs who are hungry and all that, they are more likely to go through your trash and to perhaps go up to you. If you're a person who's uncomfortable with these dogs, maybe feeding them would be the answer. And finally, that Yeah, if you're looking for a special woman out there who's clear about her purpose and her passion,
Oh my
and
gosh,
if
we're
you love
embarrassing
animals,
ourselves.
there we go. Gary's Gary's out there. I you know, there you go. You can contact Gary. I don't have a number, but you can message her, find her online.
We're kidding, right? We're kidding.
I
We're
would
kidding.
I
We're
would
kidding.
love it if at some point, one of our 5 viewers actually result in a future partner for Gary. I think that would be pretty epic. No, I'm sorry, Gary, for putting you on the spot. I hope you don't
In an
mind.
Indian family, there's always like that whole arranged marriage aspect. So I always tell my mom, I want to marry a vet. So I'm not going to agree to any arranged marriage, but if it's a vet, even if he's missing a leg or an eye, I'd marry him.
Okay, there you go. Any vets out there?
My mom, yeah, that's something I've been telling her from the time I was young, but yeah, internal
No,
joke.
but yeah, I really respect the fact that you're so honest and you're so transparent. I think that's a quality that many people are,
Forgetting.
many people, yeah, have not matured in themselves, in their development. So, kudos to you, and I'm just so thankful that you've taken the time and you're willing to be on our show. Yeah, thanks so
I'm
much.
actually super thankful because, to be honest, like I've never actually spoken about this like this to anyone. Like I say, we just, most of the time it's just animal needs help, you do it, and then one day at a time it's done. I've never actually sat down and thought about it or what I'd like to say to people, or so this has got me thinking. And so I have to thank you guys because, like, you asked me what was my motivation. I would say this is also my motivation because now that I know that, the efforts are being appreciated, or, that it's a good effort, that I want to go out and I want to do a lot more. So I actually really have to thank you guys for giving me the time to speak about this and to think about it, to take the time to sit down and actually think about it, think about stuff that I never really thought about before. So
Amazing.
I'm so glad. So glad. Yeah.
It's been such a pleasure. I know it's technically work for me. I'll put it out there. Like it comes with the stress, but I think this really reminds me, or it makes me happy to be able to do this as well. Really, it's just to highlight, Gowri, like Johnson mentioned, an ordinary person like most of us, putting in the extra, to make things extraordinary now. In your
you guys
case,
are doing amazing. Yeah, I should go and like find out more. Like, so glad to have gotten to know you all.
well, looking at the time, we're 6 o'clock on the dot. So I actually like to commend ourselves. We are pretty good on time. So Gowri, if you have any further words or sharing final words out there that you'd like to share to the public, or for viewers who may watch this in the future, feel free to share. Otherwise, Johnson, I think this feels like the right time, the appropriate time to end the show. So would you like to take us away? Of course, if Gowri has nothing to say, of course.
Yeah, I'm so waiting for Gary.
There's just one thing I want to say, and that is that animals are beautiful. Just give them a chance, and once you get to know them, you will realize how amazing they are. So if you're the kind of person who's afraid of animals or who's never really taken the time to get to know them, now would be a good time to do that, because there's so much of happiness and excitement and fulfillment there that you are not really tapping into. It's almost like finding your peace when you're with them. So give them a chance, just get to know them before you form an opinion about them. That's probably what I want to say.
Well,
Sometimes
that's
we call them, we say we are rescuing animals, but we don't realize sometimes that they are the ones rescuing us. They are the ones coming
like
into
that.
our life and like, giving us happiness, or taking stress away from our lives, and enriching our lives, making our lives better. Sometimes they end up rescuing us. So give them a chance. You never know when you'll meet an amazing animal and just fall head over paws with them.
Wow.
That's beautiful parting words. I think that's a great end. Thank you so much, Gowri. To all of you listening out there, this is Why You So Extra, where we've just spent 1.5 hours that has just flown by, talking to someone as passionate as Gowri about her work with animals. And in future episodes, we are looking to feature people with similar qualities as well, people who are ordinary, but who are willing to put that extra to make things extraordinary. Whether big or small, we believe that change begins with you. And I hope that you've been inspired today, and that you can reach out to us and recommend people who have inspired you so that we can feature them on our show. With that, thank you so much, everyone. That's it.